From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
What is happening, party people? Welcome to another awesome episode of the Friday Conversation here on the CyberHub Podcast. I've got a special one for you folks today. It's epic, of epic proportions, of all epic proportions. It is beyond epic because it's a two-part show. You're going to get it this Friday. You're going to get another one next Friday. And if you think we're done, we may bring you another one the following Friday. I don't know. I can't get enough of Jim. So I may just have him co-host the damn show with me at this point. All right. It's a magnificent show. So before we get started on today's show, please make sure to subscribe to the CyberHub Podcast. Go check out our brand new website. And really, really soon, we're doing something that no other podcast has done before, especially not in security. If you're ever curious about one topic and you go, I've heard James speak about it, but I can't remember when. Well, you can go to our website at cyberhubpodcast.com. You can do a simple word search like China, which we're going to talk about in part 2, or electronic warfare, which we're going to talk about on right now, and cyber warfare, or China, or Russia, or Log4j, or whatever it is. And our website will populate all of the podcast episodes where we've talked about it and give you the time frames when we've talked about it. So you can consume the content you're looking for right then and there. You can get it, go about your day. So it's going to be awesome. Go to cyberhubpodcast.com, subscribe to our newsletter, and this will be up for our members. It's free to be a member on our website once we launch this. So you can go and get it there as well. It's going to be absolutely unbelievable. All right, let's get into today's show because it's magnificent. Joining me is the one, the only, the former retired Navy Captain 06, just recently off of the uniform. He's currently at CTO at Giesler, LLC, which is a woman veteran-owned small business. And really their CEO, Patricia, is one of my favorite people on the planet. And her CTO is just an unbelievable person with so much knowledge. It's mind-boggling. Jim Darenkamp. Jim, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
I'm good to go. I'm anxious, actually. Problem is, as you get older, you got so much stuff in your brain. How's it going to come out is a different story to see.
Well, I think it's going to come out just perfect on today's show, folks. So this show, like I said, it's broken down into 2 parts. We're going to give you 25 minutes today as we talk about electronic warfare. 25 minutes next week, we're going to be talking about geopolitics, China and Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine, and the recently what's happening as we record this now. The U.S. and Chinese navies are in a race to retrieve a F-35C, the most advanced aircraft in the U.S. arsenal of aircrafts that crashed in the South China Sea. Luckily, we've had no casualties in that accident. However, we do have 6 service members who were injured, including the pilot, who is in critical condition at the moment. So please pray for the safety of our troops. The world's becoming a bit more uncertain each and every single day. Jim, let's talk a little bit about electronic warfare. And I really want to kick this off to you because, would you mind just breaking down to our audience a little bit how electronic warfare is different from cyber warfare, and what is electronic warfare?
First of all, electronic warfare is an art and science. So it's an art and science of denying the enemy the benefits of the electromagnetic spectrum, so that we can still use ours. Now, cyber warfare is a little bit different, where it involves crippling the adversaries using the internet or through information systems. Now, I can use EW to do a cyber warfare mission. For instance, I can take an airborne weapon and drop it off in a wireless area and send a malicious code out there. So you can do something like that. How do you combine the two? However, they're different. Electronic warfare has 3 areas, or 3 types. You got electronic warfare support, which is basically to detect and just basically detect and intercept, detect, and locate. Then you got electronic attack, which is I call it offensive electronic warfare. Basically, I go jamming, I launch harm missiles, anti-radiation missiles. So And then I have electronic protect, which is, I call it electronic warfare defense. So if somebody is jamming me, I can do a ECCM, electronic countermeasure, to alleviate that. So that's in a nutshell. I mean, I can go. I got a book here. This is a little book with formulas. It's really, so I can actually go into that, but I don't want to bore you with all that stuff. But electronic warfare is used in the military back in the 70s and 80s when I was around. Electronic warfare. We used to we could intercept our adversaries hundreds of miles away, sometimes thousands. In the 80s, it became closer in. As soon as we start getting rid of the F-14 and the other, so we had to bring everything in. So everything became more early warning radar. So that's when the Slick 32 came out. You probably heard of that. Slick 32. It's mainly anti-ship missile defense. I call it, as soon as I get that, my mouth just go ahead and we've already been intercepted. So electronic warfare is a lost art, in my opinion. This is just Jim Darenkamp's opinion, and I said this later in my military career. It's a lost art because now we bring the enemy closer to us. Before we took we had
greater range.
Yeah, we could intercept them way out there, and we wouldn't be found at all unless we really did something. So we'd be in total silence. Like a battle group back in those days consisted of 12 to 14 ships, maybe 16. A strike group today might consist of maybe 4. So you can see how the Navy has gotten smaller and smaller, but we have to have a more finer, more potent weapon system on board. So electronic warfare is, for instance, in the detect engage sequence, the way it used to be on the older cruisers I could be on, like the USS Long Beach, the Arkansas, with the new threat. But before Aegis, we were be able to intercept, say I was on an operator, for the audience, I started out as a enlisted. I was an E1 all the way up to senior chief and then became an officer. So back in the day, I intercept the aircraft radar from, say, Soviet Union or other country, and then we would find out via our database, which is usually every time we're out there, we Haltech. Haltech means if we're in the vicinity, we Haltech this aircraft, or we Haltech this ship. So we know this ship has these radars, and this is the fingerprint for this ship. So if I ever see this aircraft or ship, I know that this aircraft, I might have a tail number to it, and it might be fused together by a SIGINT. Say somebody said it took off from this site, from this airfield. And so combined together, we can send out a F-14 Capt, combat air patrol, out there 300, 400 miles, way out there, and intercept it and escort it out of the area so it wouldn't come into the battlefield. Nowadays, they know where we're at.
Is the modernization of weaponry and the transition to maybe, in the 70s and 80s, the internet wasn't really a thing on ships. Today, internet is a very real thing on ships, right? Satellite communications through IP protocols is really almost the standard form of communication in some cases. Has that really hindered the progress or kind of reduced the dependency on electronic warfare?
I think you nailed it. I think we rely too much on modern technology. For instance, one bad weather. We all know satellites don't work well in heavy weather and storms. So for instance, I have satellite internet at home, so if it rains, I don't get internet. And it's the same applies to our systems. If it rains, if the weather's bad, we don't get internet. So just imagine an adversary who could take it out just by either weather or something or just using chat, or by re-radiating, taking a signal, re-radiating, or malicious, or send out malicious codes. There's a way you can get rid of it. Or to get even more extreme, say some rebel country just launches a nuclear missile above their country, an EMP signal, and you just wipe out the entire electromagnetic frequency in that area. And so I don't think we're trained to do mode 3 operations like we used to do, using the stars, celestial navigation, flashing light, signals. The way it used to be, RT talking on the radio using HF, with low probability of intercept. Those are all lost art because I think we rely too much on modern technology. Modern technology is good, but what is our adversary going to do first? What do we think? If I'm thinking of it, I'm a hillbilly from Kentucky. They already thought of it. So if you take out all the satellites, we're back to World War II. We're back to those days with radars and stuff like that. In my opinion, these are my opinion.
No, and I mean your opinion is very, very valid. I mean we're talking in a time here where it seems like the next world war could be on the brink of breaking at any point in period in time. There hasn't been a war in the continent of Europe since World War II. Really, well, technically since Kosovo, right? Yeah, Kosovo, and that's what now 22, 23 years ago. That was 98, 99. That was the end of the Clinton presidency when that took place. We live in a different era and age. I agree with you. I think we're a bit more spoiled today than we were before. I think technology makes us complacent and lazy. I've always wondered if the Navy looks at electronic warfare for really what it is, which is kind of like it's on the ship, it's there. Yeah, maybe not everyone knows how to use it, but if we ever need it, there'll be one guy on there who's, done it before, who can come and kind of, pull that, ultimate Hollywood script, the 60-year-old guy who is the only guy who knows how to fly an airplane. And that's the only airplane that can fly type of deal.
Well, the electronic warfare, the operators are taught today to evaluate using what the EW library has already done. So whatever they pick up a signal and say, oh, this is this radar. Oh, it's friendly. But you know what? It could be friendly, but then again, did they do a Haltech on? Because the Slick 32, you can't Haltech. Because on the early one that we used to have, I used to have an O-scope, and I can bring it down to right to the detail. I can actually bring it down to what it is and actually find out that, that radar, that pulse width has a spike on it. It's going to go into it's about ready to switch modes into a fire control mode. You won't be able to see that in the Slick 32 because what it'll do is it'll say, well, it's still this radar. It's already evaluated via computer. See, we rely on our computers too much to do the work for us. And then next thing you know, we might shoot down the wrong aircraft, the wrong country, or vice versa. So I think they're using electronic warfare now to confirm the identity. What's your radar have? Well, yeah, it has this. The EW library says it's this. Do you really trust that electronic warfare library? I mean, do you trust what's on the internet right now?
Well, so there's a concept in security called zero trust, right? Which is, just yesterday, the White House issued a federal directive to all federal agencies, civilian and federal, to implement zero trust, and they've given them a 2-year time window with a 30-day period. So up until February 25th, they need to assign a project lead for the zero trust implementation within each federal unit. And then within 60 days, they need to present the plan to the White House on how they plan to incorporate zero trust within their existing infrastructure. And then they've got about a 2-year window, so until January of 2024, I believe, to pull it off and be fully implemented with a zero trust architecture. Is there such a thing as zero trust in electronic warfare, though?
if I get a signal, say if I get this frequency, say I got a frequency of like 93 megahertz, 9300 megahertz, and it's PRF. Most of the time, it's a navigation radar or surface search radar or phishing radar. However, we know back in the 70s and 80s, our adversaries had that same type of radar on their warships. So if you believe that's a navigation radar or phishing radar, but those same phishing radar I can put on my warship, do you trust that?
No, God, no. I mean, that's, but what you're bringing up is something that I think is very, very interesting, right? Which is kind of the modernization of electronic warfare, if there's such a thing, right? Where how do you incorporate and really enhance electronic warfare to really provide a battlefield advantage for our forces against our adversaries?
I think it's going to take a lot more to bring it out there. I think we have a lot of good industries out there that can do it. Will they go backwards to bring electronic warfare the way it used to be? I don't think so. I think they're going to keep it as is because it's going to cost too much to bring those nice big aircraft that we used to have, the F-14, those aircraft. But electronic warfare, it just needs fine tuning.
So talk a little bit about that fine tuning, right? I think so often there's this confusion about warfare, and cyber seems to be really, really sexy. I mean, I'm in cybersecurity. I think cyber is the sexiest thing on the planet when it comes to warfare. I think the idea that I don't have to send one of my men to possibly lose his life is an advantage. Anytime I can fight something from behind a computer where I reduce my loss of life but increase damage to my adversary, I'm all for it, right?
Electronic warfare, say if I get attacked with a jamming signal, I got a bearing on the jamming signal. So if I'm in a battle group or strike group, say on electronic warfare, I get a signal, either a surface search, air search, whatever radar, it's going to be a bearing line on the NTDS, the tactical data system. And then another EW platform will have that same with a bearing line, so it's got a cross section. And then maybe another platform here is it. So now we have an idea on where that NTDS, where that location could be. Now we can send out an aircraft or a surface unit to verify and see if there's anything out there sending out that jamming signal. So that's a difference. We have an idea where it's coming from. Where cyber, we really don't. We have to rely on IP addresses, MAC addresses. We have to figure out where that's coming from. We can say it could be Russia. We can say it could be China. We can say it could be Korea or Iran. But could we also say it could be within us? So we don't.
Yeah.
So
I completely agree with the fact that attribution in cyber warfare is far more difficult than electronic warfare. Electronic warfare, you can put up any airplane or drone and take an image of whoever's doing it, and if that's a ship and it's flying a Chinese flag, then by all means, we know it's the Chinese, right? But if it's in cyber, I think the difference in cyber is attribution is far more difficult. We've seen China get very creative with this. China did a cyber attack on Israel. They were attacking Israeli companies, but they were using Farsi codes in the notes. They were using Farsi in the notes of some of the malware that they were dropping in order to kind of throw them off the scent that it's Chinese and that it's coming from Iran. The only thing the Chinese didn't think thoroughly about was the fact that a lot of people in Israel, especially in the military, are trained to speak Farsi. And there's a lot of Iranian Jews that after the Islamic Revolution in Iran moved to Israel. In fact, we have the story of what's it called? That Ben Affleck made a movie about it where he took out the embassy personnel using our Canadian counterparts. Argo, yep. So Israel also had a bunch of flights of Jewish families out of out of Iran during the Islamic Revolution. Stuff that the Mossad did at the time. That up until today they don't speak about it because the people who helped them are still in Iran, right? So they don't want those people to get prosecuted. But the people who spoke Farsi in the Israeli military were like, "Hey, this Farsi makes no sense. Like these words, like Iranians don't speak this type of Persian. This is like really concrete. It's like very old school Persian." Well, the Chinese didn't really study up on it. They were just trying to use different keywords that they knew Iranians would use, but they didn't use them in the proper context. And then the Israelis continued to investigate and traced it back to China. So, I mean, the attribution is possible, but it takes you knowing what you're looking for, right?
Yes, because we used to do the same electronic warfare. We used to mimic our, say, a carrier strike force, carrier battle group. We used to take a frigate, put a radar van on it, and mimic, record about 2 weeks flying ops for a carrier, say, Kitty Hawk's getting on their way back in the day. So the Kitty Hawk, all the flight forwarding information and everything is in this van. The FF, the frigate, is just heading on a southerly direction, going to the Indian Ocean. At the same time, the carrier strike force is going a different route. It might show up in, say, Sea of Kursk or someplace else. But anytime the Soviets' surveillance forces are looking for the Kitty Hawk back in the day, so all they hear is that frigate radiating, going flight ops, and so they'll waste an asset sending their aircraft, say a Bear, out there and look for the Kitty Hawk. And at the same time, they couldn't find the Kitty Hawk, but they found the frigate. But we couldn't find the Kitty Hawk. Next thing you know, the Kitty Hawk shows up in the Sea of Kursk, turns on our radars, and next thing you know, everybody we're in their backyard, and so we get surprised. And the next thing you know, they surprise us with all their glory. But those are back in the days, you can do that, but can we do that now? Because now with the sea lines there's a lot of people out there out there right now. Almost everybody has a fleet, and you get out there, and everybody, as soon as they see somebody, they're going to report it. Hey, I see it. So we rely too much on our technology, and we relied too much on our technology in Afghanistan and Iraq, and all it took was a simple, bomb with a cell phone. To take out.
Yeah, before we end this segment, I kind of want to ask you this. We left $86 billion worth of military equipment in Afghanistan. I remember in the days following our withdrawal from Afghanistan, I was watching stuff on some underground channels, right, for former intel channels, watching stuff that's going on in Afghanistan with the Taliban and Al Qaeda and ISIS. Now have a country with people and a staging ground, and also $86 billion worth of U.S. equipment, military equipment. And I was wondering, how easy is it to reverse engineer that electronic warfare now for our adversaries? Because as I was watching those videos, I couldn't help but hear so much Mandarin and Chinese in the background of those videos as they were showing the military equipment to some of the media personnel. They had a bunch of Chinese experts there on that equipment. How easy is it to reverse engineer this stuff?
I mean, you can use the internet right now to find anything on a super heterodyne receiver, and I can make electronic warfare super heterodyne receiver at home. I can use tubes, transistors. I can still go to that old Radio Shack or that old store down the road, and if I can take that transistor stuff and I can basically convert it into digital, and I can make a circuitry where I can. It's easier than you think for them, because that's what they do. In my opinion, I think if you look at everything the Chinese have, it looks just like ours with their little twist.
Yeah, I mean, their J-21 aircraft looks eerily similar to the F-35.
Yes. So I think they're very, very good at it, and I think we can do it too, but we always have but they got so many people that they don't cost them hardly anything. Here it costs us a lot of money.
Well, because they use slave labor. I mean, it's not fair. But we're going to get to that in the next part. We're going to get into geopolitics here in part 2. As we're almost out of time, Jim. So I kind of want to, what's the future of electronic warfare in your opinion, especially from a naval perspective?
I hope. I know there's prototypes out there to improve electronic warfare, to combine signal intelligence, information intelligence. I know there is a move afoot to improve it. I hope to see that within the next 5 years. I do see that. I do.
I hope so as well. I really do. Folks, we're going to take a short break here. If you're going to watch this entire video on YouTube, we're going to take a 30-second break, and then we're going to move on to part 2. If you're watching us live, this is going to be the end of the show for you. You can go to YouTube to catch part 2 now. Check it out. It's going to be really, really awesome. So we'll be right back. Part 2, talking about geopolitics here, Russia, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, and where do we all play in the middle, including our Afghanistan withdrawal with $86 billion worth of equipment left behind. What does that really mean for our posture? We'll be right back after this, folks. All right, folks, we are back. Part 2 of my conversation with former Navy captain and CTO at Giesler, Jim Darenkamp. If you missed part 1, you may want to go back. We were talking electronic and cyber warfare, difference, the capabilities, and really is sometimes should we go back to the old school because just sometimes it might give us a better battlefield advantage. Now we're going to get into a little bit about regional geopolitics, specifically, Jim, you were in the Navy for quite some time. I think you were I'm not going to age you, right? But I should say that the end of the Cold War was something you would remember.
Let's just say I was in the Navy when the Iranian crisis hit, hostage crisis.
Okay, so again, the end of the Cold War, right? If we look at the end of the Cold War, a lot of people towards the end of the Cold War, kind of have a lot of different recollections over that time period. But now we're looking at kind of the tensions again between Russia and the Ukraine, the possibility of a war, the moving of a naval strike force to the Mediterranean to support our NATO allies, even though Ukraine is not a NATO member. What's it take for a Navy kind of entire fleet to move into the Mediterranean in preparation, and what does that really mean from in your opinion, from a battlefield perspective?
Well, I never did. I only did one world cruise on the Long Beach, so my only entrance into the Mediterranean was through the Suez Canal. But my opinion is the ships going into the Med now are probably going via Norfolk, and they're working. They've already read the operations plans. They're generating plans right now. Operations plan, tactical and strategic plans in preparation for anything that may happen in that area. And they also, when they do those plans, they have to ensure that there's unintended consequences. So say if I did this, what can happen? Oh, I didn't plan on this to happen, but it did happen. So how are we going to do that? So there's a lot that goes into it. So a lot of they've already practiced it. The strike group was already, before they got underway, they've already practiced it before they got and they're still practicing it as a sail across the sea. For us, for us Westpackers, we have more time. For the Atlantic, you only got maybe 7 days to get there. For us, it can take you 14 to 21 days. And realistically, I have other versions of it to get there faster, but it takes about more than 2 weeks. So we have time to practice it, plan on it, and when we get to the Sea of South China Sea, Sea of Japan, Sashimi Straits, we're ready for it. And plus, we already have a force there. We have a force off Japan. We call it. I was on the Midway. We were Battle Group Alpha.
Right.
We were called the expendable force. So when it hit the fan, we were there, and we weren't slated to last long. We were just to hold it over until reinforcements came. And then the op plan in defense of that country required up to 7 carrier strike forces in that area to actually defend that, fight that battle. So do we have that today? You can do the math. So that comp plan is still there. Especially with the Spratly Islands, I'm sure you heard about that going on. And we've watched this, and we've watched this, and we've watched it as China put airfields just dredging. I mean, when I was stationed in Bahrain, I saw how they just dredged the Persian Gulf to make Bahrain bigger. You see that in Abu Dhabi. But you can see that they're doing the same thing, and they've already done the same thing in Spratly Island. So they got airfields there, so now they can come closer and strike. They can control that area. The Philippines, Singapore, Hong Kong. So.
I don't mean to dismiss our adversary in a country like China, but if one thing I feel very confident about is everything they're building is made in China. And so by all means, it only lasts good for about 1 or 2 uses, and then it's pretty much done.
Coronavirus is the longest thing that China lasts.
If we look specifically around the stuff that's going on right now, I want to talk about something that's really taking place as we're recording this. There'll probably be a little bit more information when this airs. But one of our advanced F-35C jets happened to crash land in the South China Sea. Pilot in critical condition. I believe 5 other members that were on that naval carrier were injured when the plane came down. 3 of them had to be transported to the Philippines for urgent medical care. They couldn't get that care on the ship. So China has kind of said the South China Sea is ours. This plane is our, and it's in our territory. It's in international waters. It's fair game. We're going to go get it. And now the U.S. Navy is scrambling to get to also find it and get to it before the Chinese do. Either recover it or blow it to bits and pieces that no one knows what the hell's in it. Right, 1 or 2 things that you do there. But it seems like this is our more advanced F-35. This one is 100% sourced and made in the U.S. It's got a longer wingspan. It flies longer missions. It's more stealthy. It's more lethal. And the Chinese would love nothing more than to get their hands on that tech. What's an operation like that take from your experience? We're talking about a recovery here in a race against time, and really with our ships and the Chinese ships coming within miles of each other in the South China Sea. Could there be a provocation there, something that could kind of increase tensions with the Chinese?
Anything can happen, but what we see on the surface, that's what we see. But we don't know what's going below the surface. We don't. So I'm sure, this is just Jim Darenkamp speaking, I am sure there's submarines in the water right now in the area taking care of that issue as we speak. This is just me, because we know what submarines can carry. You can watch movies, you can read books. So they carry their own, they carry their special forces to the scene, they carry divers to the scene. They do what they need to do to resolve the issue, in my opinion. But what we see on the surface, we'll probably see saber rattling, we call it. We'll probably see the saber rattling between the Chinese and the US. And then I don't think nothing will happen, because it would not do very well for China, because they're not there yet, in my opinion, because based on the RIMPAC exercises that I've participated in, they're not there. They've never done this kind of. We have decades, centuries of
experience, right?
Yes.
They're stealing a lot of data, though, right? I mean, the Chinese and cyber capabilities are very sneaky. I mean, I think you and I both know our information was compromised as part of the OPM breach in 2014. We know that China has all of our information at this point. They've got the log books of our experience. They've been able to, talk to some of our experts in a way to get some of that stuff in. Do you think there's a difference between hearing battle stories to actually operating? Because we haven't been in a real naval battle in quite some time. I mean, we've ruled the seas for as long as I can remember, in my lifetime at least.
You're right. I keep going back. I'm a big sci-fi guy. One of my favorites was Battlestar Galactica, the newer one, the 2003. You remember when they all came out and the Cylons jammed all the ships? Hacked all the ships that were network-based, and the only ship that remained was Battlestar Galactica. And the rest of the fleet was disabled because they were hacked, because they were networked. So can that happen today? If I were somebody, I would just hack my fleet just by, because we don't have that capability, the Mode 3 capability anymore. And so we don't train our sailors. My last ship I was on, I was able to train my sailors. I said, turn off your computers. We're going to operate this way. They learned so much. They liked it. They liked looking out to sea and see, there's the stars. Let's navigate celestially. Let's do everything by radar and without the computer, using grease pencils, low boards and stuff like that, DRT. Figured everything out the old-fashioned way, and they enjoyed it. They liked it that way instead of being complacent on a computer. And then that way, when things broke, they knew exactly what to do. Before, when things break, you might have things like collisions at sea, stuff like that. So I think we've gone backwards. Technology is so great. It's so great that we have gone backwards in our capability.
So we're seeing the Russian, Chinese, and Iranians now hold joint naval exercises, which lets me know that feels like a hillbilly lake activity, right? The Iranians don't have a navy. They've got a bunch of speedboats with explosives on them and weapons. That's pretty much the entire Iranian navy, is a bunch of speedboats. The Russians have somewhat of a navy. They've got more submarines than they do kind of, strike groups, but they've got ships. And the Chinese build a lot of ships, but, it's kind of like how they build cities and then there's no one there to operate them.
Right.
The same would apply with their navy.
But they have them. They have them. So
right.
It's like back in the Cold War, the Russia had their ships, but we respected them, but at the same time we understood they're like the Chinese are now. They're still coming over on the fleet. We had centuries of experience, but they didn't have that yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
However, they had the capability of taking out their weapons, their missiles can take out. They can take out a lot. So capably, all you have to do is take someone with the mindset, just push a button. That's all it takes. Someone with the mindset to push a button. And then, but look, like you said, in Iranian, when I was in there a lot, yeah, they can do that. But just think about when I was out there, and I was a weapons officer on a certain ship. We were in port, and it was about 11 o'clock at night. There was a boat coming toward us. I was a weapons officer. I was a command duty officer. I put a light on it and gave it a warning. I only gave one warning. I shot over their bow. They turned around. A few months later, we all know what happened to Cole. I'd rather be, hey, I'll take the chance now. I'll go ahead and get yelled at. Okay, sorry, my fault. But if you're not going to answer me, I don't know your intentions. So the Iranians, we know what their intention is going to be. They're going to harass. They're going to harass and harass. But how far are they going to go? So how far?
We saw them take over one of our naval ships and take some of our sailors in what was a humiliating moment, I think, for our nation.
And I was getting to that too. Yeah,
right.
That was humiliating, and that's what they'll do to us, because they'll work over one of our ships and humiliate us. They'll just overtake one. All I do is take one, because we don't have that gumption anymore like we used to have. We don't have that. We just want to win. We just take the war. We don't win it. We just neutralize it. We don't win it any more than we could. We don't win it.
And I feel like that's a flawed philosophy, right? You can't neutralize someone. It's very similar to why we're having the kind of like socialism, communism debate in our nation today, right? We thought we beat them in the 60s. And then in the fall of the Soviet Union, we felt like that was it. We were done, but we didn't really win it. We neutralized it, but we didn't get rid of, kind of communism. We allowed it to kind of exist, what we thought within control and reason. But you can never control an ideology. It's very similar to what we see with, the jihadi mentality within some people with the Islamic faith. And I'm very careful to say that, because not every Muslim believes in jihad. It's very, very important to say that.
Yeah.
And so, so it's critical to point out the same thing, that we take out bin Laden, we took out al-Baghdadi, right? And those are great, but we never took out the ideology. And I think that's where I'd rather capture bin Laden and get him to retract everything he says and humiliate him to the point where I kill his followers and ideology and completely eliminate his capabilities, his credibility as being a power source. Would have done the same with al-Baghdadi. I mean, Trump tried to do that with al-Baghdadi. He was like, he used his wives as shields. He ran away like a dog, right? Trump understood that mentality of trying to humiliate al-Baghdadi in his death, in order to really try to impact the seriousness of ISIS and their ability to recruit based on a martyr. I think we've always made our adversaries martyrs rather than completely eliminate them and strip their credibility.
I agree with you on that. I do. Back when the wall came down, the Berlin Wall came down, everybody thought Russia would never be a superpower again. But deep down, we knew. There's a lot of documents out there. I can find an old document that it's an unclassified document, said that you might have just torn down, but Russia will be back. But they'll be back stronger. So basically, what they did, they took their ideology and sold it throughout the world.
Right.
Their arms, everything, they sold it throughout the world.
In fact, they had more influence after their breakup than they did pre their breakup, because during the USSR, people were wary of doing business with Gorbachev, with a lot of the folks over there. Now we see almost the same thing. People are wary. So what's very interesting for me is most Western businesses are wary of doing business in Russia. Someone who's been in Russia multiple times, let me tell you, I've never met nicer than the Russian people. The Russian people love our country. They love what we stand for. They do. I've never seen, there's more American cars in Russia than there are in America. I mean, they pick up American classics, Cadillacs, Chevy, Fords, Mercuries, Buicks, you name it. Yeah, they love their German cars, right? The oligarchs, they love their German cars. But a status symbol within the average middle-class family in Russia is not a Lada, which is a, Russian vehicle that was only made in the color yellow, by the way, for like 20 years. When Lada got a new model, it was they added colors. But I found it fascinating how much they loved American culture. I was in a city in Russia called Nizhny Novgorod, which is about 480 miles northeast of Moscow. So it's on the Nordic Lights. I mean, I was watching, the green lights in the middle of the night there. I mean, I was there during the summer. It was 2 a.m. and it was still light outside, right? It was magnificent. And everywhere I went to eat, it was an American diner. Now, it had Russian food, but it was an American-style diner with American license plates on the wall. Colorado, California, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Delaware, Vermont, Arizona, Utah, Texas, Georgia, Florida, Montana. I felt like I had more in common with my Russian counterparts than I did with my Chinese counterparts. Culturally.
Yeah. I never been to
The
Russia.
basis of Russian civilization. The basis of the Russian civilization, by the way, it's very similar to the American. It's based on the Judeo-Christian kind of doctrine.
Right. Yeah, I've only pulled into 2 ports in Russia, Vladivostok and Petrov, and they're very pro-American. When you talk to them, they're very pro-American. They love you. They want you to talk. But I didn't say anything. But they want you to talk. They want you to tour your ship. Of course. But I think we're too liberal. Let's be friends. That's good. But at the same time, we just stopped it. We didn't go for the kill. We just let it happen. So like Russia went away, we think, but it just got bigger. Did ISIS go away? No. I think I was stationed in Israel for almost a year, and I learned a lot there. How basically this one little nation, everybody hates you.
Yep. Surrounded by your enemies.
And I understand it. You don't trust nobody. You don't trust anybody. I mean, they didn't even trust Americans. And I get it, because you just don't trust anybody.
Well, they don't trust America because during it was the war of 73,
73 war.
74, we needed weapons. And at the time, then Senator Joe Biden said, then Senator, now President, we're not giving you guys more weapons. And there's a very famous line by then Prime Minister, I believe it was David Ben-Gurion or Menachem Begin, who said, you don't scare us with your bombs. We've learned after the Holocaust that no one's going to come to our aid. We'll build our own bombs. We'll build our own planes. And it wasn't until after that war that we did sign a defense treaty and a support treaty with Israel and have given them kind of unconditional support in terms of weaponry, because Israel was at that time they needed weapons, and we delayed it. We didn't send them anything until after they had won. But Israel could have easily fallen that day.
It's just, I mean, history repeats itself.
Yep.
Because we don't teach it anymore. We stopped teaching it because we want to meet a certain agenda, and here we are.
Yeah, it seems like we're looking geopolitically over something that I think is very, very interesting. We're seeing kind of this new axis very similar to the Italian-Germany alliance pre-World War II, the Mussolini-Hitler alliance, the Hitler-Turkey alliance. People forget that Turkey turned a blind eye to Hitler. They had Hitler was afraid of the Turks.
Yep.
Hitler was desperately afraid of the Turks. And he signed a treaty with them, that he won't go after them. They won't come after him. They won't join anything and kind of stay on the sidelines.
Yeah. So let's go back to China. So where are all the microchips made usually for us?
So it's Taiwan. Yeah. You know what? That's so funny. I did a room this morning. It's January 27th on Clubhouse on the other side of cyber. People can go and listen to it. If you've got the Clubhouse app, go to the other side of cyber. And we were talking about China and the Olympic app that has listening capabilities. They're requiring every athlete and journalist that's attending the Olympic Winter Olympic Games in China to download this My 2022 app that is filled with spyware and malware, just loaded with it. And we were talking about it, and I said, China doesn't look at Taiwan and go, this is a renegade nation, we want it. No, China sees Taiwan as the last frontier for them to really take over the entire chip and semiconductor manufacturing in the world, because their biggest competitor for that type of manufacturing is Taiwan.
Right. And also the chips are also being made in Malaysia too.
Correct.
So, but the main part of the chips, what we need, are in Taiwan.
Yep.
So, and I think because China is very good at reverse engineering, you got China, Russia, North Korea, they all want to go after this F-35.
China would love nothing more than to take that type of, to take over Taiwan and remove that. I mean, Intel just announced that they're building a $20 billion semiconductor manufacturing facility just outside of Columbus, Ohio. That announcement came out this week. So that's significant. We're going to see that. That's good. That's one step, but we need about 10 more of those, right? We need to get one built in Texas and another one in Arizona, and we should get one in Montana or South Dakota. We should have another one in Pennsylvania. We should have several in Iowa and Nebraska. Those are going to be critical. And the rare earth minerals, we ought to start going after, the places with the rare earth minerals and being able to secure that entire supply chain. So we're not building a semiconductor factory that's still waiting for parts to come from China in order to put together the components.
And our own oil. We got our own. We got plenty of it.
Yeah, indeed. Jim, thank you so much, really, for coming on and sharing. I want to be mindful of our time. I really do want to say thank you. Thank you for coming. And you're going to be over in, I believe your team will be over in FCO West, correct?
Correct.
You're still going to stay on the East Coast, the best coast.
Yeah, I'm going to stay here.
Yeah, good. All right. Yeah. So you guys can check out Giesler and the work that they do. Again, a woman-owned small veteran organization, and Patricia, the CEO, is one of my favorite people on planet Earth. Jim, thanks so much for coming on, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into this fun, interesting, amazing conversation on geopolitics. Getting to pick Jim's brain on this stuff to me is just fascinating. It's always a blast. Speaking to someone with your knowledge, I know there's a lot of stuff you can't share, so I'm gonna, I'm not gonna hold your legs to the fire on that one. I don't want to see you in exile. So.
Mine was just opinion anyway. If I could figure it out from a hillbilly, anybody can figure it out.
Yeah. The only problem is I think 1600 Pennsylvania hasn't figured it out yet. So, so let's help those folks over there figure it out as well. Folks, that's it for us here for another episode of the CyberHub Podcast, Friday Conversation. Jim, Darenkamp, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for spending your Friday with us. I hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll be back Monday with practitioner briefs at 9 a.m. live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and your favorite podcast listening platform. Go check it out. Go check out our brand new CyberHub Podcast website. Again, a new member area is going to be launching soon. We're going to have a swag store. So many awesome stuff that you're going to be able to get your hands on. So go check it out. Go check out our Breaking Into Cybersecurity friends there as well, with all the latest podcasts they're putting out in order to get started in cybersecurity. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being part of today's program. We'll be back with a lot more on Monday. Until then, have a great rest of your day and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.